Welcome back, everybody, to the Rolex Driver's Mess at the 2016 Goodwood Revival. And we have a bit of a special guest with us this time, all the way from Monte Carlo via Kyalami, Spa, Monza, Goodwood, Singapore. Yeah. David Coulthard, when do you have time off?
Well, that's my wife has brought that to my attention that maybe I should be refocusing on my travel schedule to spend a bit more time at home. But I think what happened for me, or I know what happened for me, having retired from Formula One and having raced since I was 11 years old, not wanting to, go into that lull of how do you fill your time once you're no longer racing. I sort of threw myself into business and television, and that's taken me on this journey of a roller coaster, which is quite difficult to get off. But it's also, as we all know, motorsport is very addictive, and if you're not actually driving the cars, looking at them, smelling them, hearing them, is something which is difficult to explain to the non-believers.
It's a drug we all have, isn't it?
Yeah. So this event has certainly evolved considerably since I was last here to a quite exceptional display, and I think something that could only happen in the English countryside.
Absolutely. We should explain why you're here, because the reason is quite strange, actually. I distinctly remember you saying in the paddock at Interlagos, when you got out of that Red Bull, that's it, I'm not going to race again. I've won 13 Grand Prix, I've had a wonderful time, it's given me a great life, that's it. Well, I see
Yeah, well, I know, and Lord March is a very persuasive individual, and I've been down at the track a couple of times to do some corporate driving events in modern machinery, so things that would be of my generation. And he explained that the Austin E35 was 90 horsepower, not very fast, and all the same. And I thought, well, if I'm here anyway, then maybe that could be fun. I can confirm that what I said in Brazil in 2008, I should have listened to myself, because it was quite a strange experience. Beautifully prepared car. Stephen, the owner, is more than generous, and his mechanics have done a great job. But it is so alien to anything that I'm used to experiencing. The amount of movement that's in the car. I had a brief flirtation with German touring cars, and they are, they're kind of like mini sports cars. They're racing cars. They're a little, sports car chassis, a bit of downforce and all that sort of thing. And it's quite interesting with A35. You turn in, and then at some point thereafter, a non-specific time, the rear starts to come towards the front, and you kind of survive that moment. And then when you accelerate, there's a moment where, as the car rolls, it stops accelerating, and then you start getting a smell of burning rubber as the inside wheel spins up, because there's no limited slip differential. So I was in my 15 minutes of qualifying. I think I was just about getting used to it when they threw the checkered flag. You should have seen the next lap. In my mind, the next lap was going to be extraordinary.
Okay, good. Did they say anything to you before? I mean, you've just arrived. You have 15 minutes to practice this thing. Did they give you any advice? Because sometimes they're a bit nervous about advising people who won Grand Prix.
Well, yeah, they shouldn't be at all, because of course this is a very different discipline, and it's a wonderful event, and very different in the way you have to approach Goodwood. And the advice I was given was no synchro mesh in first gear. Be quite careful going from second to third, which you would only really need to do leaving the paddock anyway. And the thing that really caught my attention was that if you go on the grass, straighten the steering, otherwise they have a tendency to roll. And I really don't want to see, sky, grass, and then impact. So I think the marshals can confirm that my line that I chose had a healthy safety margin to the edge of the track, just in case something happened. But whoever would race a car that has a tendency to roll? What part of fun is that?
I got to ask you, you were a damn good kart racer, and the big thing about kart racing is momentum. And it's kind of the same in these lower powered saloon cars, isn't it? It's all about momentum, because the thing hasn't really got any power. It's about keeping it moving.
Yeah. I think it's a very good point, of which I was just starting to think about that a bit more after I because before you can accelerate to leave the corner, you've got to successfully position the car on entry. So first problems first, to try and work out over the course of the few laps that I did, where was the best place to position the car, and how much was it going to react. And it's only on the last couple of laps where I thought, okay, maybe it's better to be in a longer gear so I don't get as much torque, even in a low-powered car, and to reduce that wheel spin, that inner wheel spin. But you can't do it all. I've always maintained it takes about 10 laps to learn your way around a racetrack. I think I did less than that in practice.
You did 7 laps.
Yeah, there you go. So I've got 3 laps banked away in my mind that I need to unleash tomorrow.
I've got some bad news and some good news for you. The bad news is that Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean, was quicker than you.
Yeah, he's an accomplished racer.
The good news is that you were quicker than a guy called Chandhok.
Yeah, so I work with Karun. He does a fantastic job for Channel 4. Knowledgeable, enthusiastic, very capable racer, winner, of course, in many different formulas. So that will, if we remain that way, it'll give me bragging rights when I'm making the tea for the team in Singapore. But otherwise, I don't suspect we'll spend a lot of time talking about it.
Let's talk a bit about Formula One. I think it's fair to say the Channel 4 coverage is really coming together now, mid-season. It's really beginning to gel. It's got a really nice feel about it, and it's a good team, isn't it? Are you happy? I mean, after all, it's your company, so are you happy with it?
Yeah, I think that it's fair comment that and inevitable that it takes time for everyone to be comfortable with each other's personalities and each other's roles. And in Steve Jones, we have someone will confess he's not a lifelong Formula One fan. He's not a sports presenter, but I think that he's really embraced and been a fantastic team member. His work ethic is exceptional, and he's getting to know the people in the paddock. I try and imagine how would it be for me if I went to MotoGP, and I like MotoGP, but I don't know the names of the engineers and all the team bosses, and then if you're suddenly with them in a live show, as you have to have something to say. You can't just go, good race, well done, we like your work. You have to introduce who that person is and give some background. So what I do think has worked well, and I appreciate what we've had the chance to do, is to have instead of just Eddie and I and one other, Susie Perry or Jake Humphrey all the time, we have Rosta with Alain Prost, Karun's there doing more of the technical side, Mark Webber, Susie Wolf, and others who come in and join the show. And then we've had some fantastic cameos, not at the Grand Prix, but in edited films from Murray Walker, of course, who is the ultimate sports commentator in Formula One in terms of my generation, because that's who I was listening to as a kid.
Yeah, well, and my generation.
Yeah,
I mean, Murray Walker. Yeah. I've got to ask you actually, because the interview that Murray did with Jenson Button that you had on Channel 4 last weekend is an exceptionally gripping interview, actually. Yeah. And I know JB's always good at those things, but can we expect to see more of that from Murray on Channel 4 or not?
Yeah, it's certainly part of the plan, and Murray through just life journey isn't available to travel in the way he used to, and finding time that works with everyone else is obviously a bit of a challenge as well. But I could listen to his interviews all day long, quite frankly, and I think anyone that's been involved and grew up around British motorsport will open up to him in a way. We had Freddie Hunt being interviewed, and when he brought up his father, it was emotional. And I even get a wee tear in my eye now just thinking about it. So, he's able to take people on that journey in a way that I wouldn't be able to, or some of the other younger members of the team.
I was interested to see Mika Hakkinen at Monza,
yeah,
who was always a guy with a great sense of humour, but at the same time a very tough racer.
Yeah,
and it must be interesting for you now, you two, to get together in such different circumstances. I mean, you and he were, well, he was the man to beat, and you were, you had to beat each other. It was quite a tense situation. It was,
and it's actually I was with Mika at an event last night in Berlin, and we were talking actually about the inner rivalry within a team. And anyone who's been around motorsport like we have, we know that, it doesn't matter whether it was Colin Chapman or Ron Dennis or Christian Horner or whoever it happens to be, Enzo Ferrari, they actually probably don't really mind which one of their cars wins, as long as one of their car wins. And the perfect scenario is that they have a 1-2, where for me as an individual, if I win, my success was Mika's failure, and if he was winning, which he did more often than not, then that was my failure. So it's a very unique set of circumstances of which the management have to be completely transparent in how they apportion the engineers, the new developments, the engines. McLaren, we used to draw from a hat the engine numbers, just so there was no doubt as to whether one was getting the better engine or not. And it's just these little psychological things that to get the best out of people, you have to believe that they're empowered, and you have to, or they have to believe they're totally empowered and they've got a free hand and a free opportunity. And of course, at times you have to respond to team orders, which is never a comfortable thing, but it's a fact of Grand Prix racing. You go through the history, and I can't give a named example right now, but I'm sure you can, where drivers would get out of their car and give it to their teammate and willingly and happily do it. And that was the sort of gentleman era of sport. Was that the 50s?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I was talking to Sterling Moss earlier today about Mercedes-Benz last domination in the 1950s, where his teammate was Fangio. And, they never fell out, which is, nowadays we see quite a lot of acrimony. We've certainly seen it at Mercedes-Benz today, because those two are just in a bitter fight, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, it's tough for the team. It's great for us viewers that we have that battle, because otherwise, if it was just one winning all the time, then we'd know the result of the World Championship pretty early. But because they both have an equal opportunity, because they somehow have got it wrong occasionally and they've come together, it puts Formula One at the front of the news channels and takes it off the back pages. Uncomfortable for Mercedes at times, but actually in the long run, if they were to neuter that in the way that maybe it was done at Ferrari sometimes with Michael, where he clearly was the number one, we all lose out on these sort of titanic battles that we talk about from the past. Your sort of Mansell, Piquet, Prost, Senna. We still replay the incidents and marvel at the uncomfortable moment that the team must have gone through and the drivers. But that's part of the history. If it's really, really important, people are prepared to fight hard for success.
We don't want to see a repeat of the Schumacher situation, in the sense that people were slowing down to let him through. Nobody wants to see that.
No, that's not good for the sport, and it was embarrassing on occasion. I had to move over for Mika in Melbourne, and the public did not like it. And Rubens Barrichello did the same thing in Austria. Now, if you remember, the crowd booed, and Michael tried to put him back up on the podium, but it was too late. The damage was done. So we understand today that team orders are allowed, but no one tunes in to watch sport to see a foregone conclusion. Even if your favourite team is winning all the football, you need the emotional roller coaster of them losing sometimes to really appreciate the good days.
Yeah. Now, something you really know a lot about is Red Bull. I mean, you were such a long time there, and you still have connections there. How do you see the Verstappen-Ricciardo partnership going forward, in the sense that we've obviously got a pretty exceptional talent here in Verstappen? I mean, some rough edges, right? But hey, that's normal. Yeah. How do you see that being managed in the future?
I think it will inevitably see some disappointment from one or the other driver on occasion, because they'll end up battling over the same piece of tarmac. They're both, I think, very quick drivers. Yeah. A grade of outright speed, and usually the exceptional drivers, because they're all good in Formula One, they're all good in all the various racing championships, but the exceptional drivers are the ones that tend to have sustained success. And I think in Daniel and in Max, we have this, Daniel's 26, 27, still a young man, but old in comparison to Max, and he'll see life in a slightly different way. And it will come to blows on occasion, because they'll fight over the same piece of tarmac and they'll disagree. And Christian will have to manage it in the way that he managed Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel when it didn't work out. Yeah, there was always this sort of sense that Sebastian was the favourite child. But it's going to be interesting to watch the journey. Max is certainly not intimidated. He's ruffling feathers. As long as he's being safe, then he's ruffling feathers in a way that Michael Schumacher did, Ayrton Senna did, whoever else we can manage.
Killer instinct.
From the past who just are uncompromising in their desire to win.
Yeah. The landscape is changing, David, isn't it? Felipe Massa is retiring, Jenson Button is retiring. The ownership is changing to an American company that is very much into entertainment. Is this good for Formula One? I mean, what's your take on what's happening now?
Well, I think change is inevitable. Nothing lasts forever, and there have been a lot of conversations about what is the right thing for Formula One going forward. Is it doing the right thing by the fans? The global audience has been declining since 2014, but the global revenues have been going up. So the business of Formula One is healthy, which is why the American media organisation would come in and buy it's Liberty Media, I believe is the name of the company. Bernie retains his position there for the next few years. Rather curiously, CVC are still shareholders, but with no voting or control. But I think it shows that Formula One, its revenues and its potential to return on investment is very strong. There's clearly a feeling that the distribution of the wealth should be a bit more even across, and I can sympathise with the small teams coming in and being part of the show and then not really being given an equal opportunity. But that said, I can also believe in rewarding success, and if you're Ferrari and you've invested in the sport for a long time, that should be rewarded in some way. Likewise McLaren and the legacy teams. But it needs to be a sustainable business model and hopefully regulation wise one that enables a relatively close grid. When the grid is spread out as it is now, and there's such a power difference between the best engine and the worst engine, it just leads to processional races on occasion.
I think it's fair to say that both you and Martin Brundle took to television like ducks to water when you came out of your cars, which actually isn't such an easy step as people might imagine. Did you, towards the end of your career, did you start thinking, I could do that, I'd like to do that, or not?
Well, I'd already thought about it before that, because my father and I used to watch BBC's highlights on BBC Two. I think it was on from like 9 p.m. to 9:30, pretty much across the board. Maybe Monaco and maybe Silverstone, or Brands Hatch would be live, but everything else was pretty much highlights. But I remember my father saying that got to maximise what the opportunity whilst I'm a Grand Prix driver, and I think I was 14 at the time. And then after Grand Prix racing, then look at James Hunt. You could, if you focus and do a good job and what have you, you could have a career after racing. So it was always, that seed was sown, and I had already had conversations with BBC ahead of my final season in Formula One, and therefore a contract was in place. Martin used to do my contracts, Martin Brundle. So he, not only was my contractual manager, he's a friend, and he was very helpful. And we ended up, if you recall, him as lead commentator and me as co-commentator for one season with BBC, and there was a lot of negativity and sensitivity about whether that could work. But in the end, I think Martin had so much experience of television that he was, fantastic in that role. And I've continued, from BBC into Channel 4 with Ben Edwards, who is, a tremendously hard-working, knowledgeable commentator who could actually do the whole thing on his own. But I join in occasionally, and he's got a bit of racing in his blood, not Formula One level, but he still competes, and I think that does help in either having done a little bit of racing or just having spent a lot of time around the racetracks, because then you end up living and breathing.
Yes, you're immersed in it, which is vital. Right, yeah. You mentioned your family just now, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but haven't you just had the 100th anniversary of?
The transport business.
That's right.
That's right. My brother runs the business.
That's quite
now.
A milestone.
It's fantastic, and I think it's. I was there for the evening function. It was on the same weekend as a Scottish motoring event up in the SEC called the Ignition Festival. So I flew down and obviously said a few words, and I think that as a family to have that consistency of delivering a service that people appreciate, it's quite difficult to do because no one gets it right all the time. You know, the best drivers in the world get it wrong occasionally. The best businesses get it wrong on occasion. But there's been a fairly steady position for the business, and it's gone into my brother's hands, and he's got 2 sons who work in the business, and therefore the next generation look like they're there ready to pick up when my brother steps to one side. And I think we can be proud of that history. And you know, I went off and did a different type of driving, but in the end you got to provide a service.
But they were very supportive, if I'm right. I mean, I remember talking to you way back at Thruxton when you were in Formula 3, and they were very supportive, weren't they, of that whole career path of yours, which gave you stability.
My parents were fantastic, and it's I know every child pretty much can say, oh, you know, thanks to my parents and thanks to my team and everything. But if I actually look, my parents were, you know, my mother was bringing up 3 children, running a household, and joining my father on business to see the clients. I would prepare, empty the motorhome, clean the cart. You know, one night each week I'd be doing something, repack the motorhome, and Friday night we'd set off after school to go racing down south, which is a fair old schlep from Scotland. But one thing that really, which I think is quite a nice memory for me, especially with the relationship with my father, when I won the McLaren Autosport Young Driver of the Year award. I was racing for Paul Stewart Racing and Opel Lotus, and I got the call that I'd test at the end of that year at Silverstone. So I phoned my father and said, you know, I'm testing on Thursday, Silverstone National Circuit. Are you going to come down the night before? Are you coming down on the morning? And he said, son, they're testing you, they're not testing me. Phone me after and let me know how it went on. And again, it showed his ability to, you know, to be passionate and to be supportive, but equally to understand if I couldn't handle doing the test on my own, what chances did I have? And you know, it's a good reminder, I think, that you know, we can all as parents maybe overpower our natural desire to want to help, when actually in a lot of cases your kids have either got it or they haven't. You need guidance, of course you do, but for the rest you've got to let them go on.
Sure. Let's briefly, we must finish. I know as ever you've got people to see, places to go. Let's just come back to this weekend. I mean, tomorrow the race.
Yeah. My last ever. Historical day in my mind.
just describe to us. I mean, as we all know, you've got this wonderful life, a wonderful career, but you're mid-pack tomorrow. What's your? How do you approach this? Because you want to have some fun, but you want to be safe. Yeah. And after all, it's entertainment. Yeah. You're not about to win a world championship. No. So what's your approach? Just tell it.
I'm really disappointed in some of my other co-racers that they're going so quickly. It's not giving any opportunity for overtaking and to entertain the crowd. So I'll be having a word. And look at that handsome man over there. You can't see out of camera angle. We've got multiple Le Mans winner there.
Yes.
Yeah, and Tom Christensen looking very dapper. You have to walk in and walk out because we've referenced you on camera, and then
there he comes. Do give us a twirl, Tom.
And he's doing the catwalk.
Catwalk.
Not only an amazing driver, look at the way he walks.
Born to it, eh?
Oh, braces as well. Well done. So that's just another regular moment at Goodwood, isn't it?
Smartest Dane in the world.
That's it, yeah. Approach the race carefully. I definitely don't. I don't want to risk the car of the owner. I want to bring it back without any scratches whatsoever. It would be nice if we could do a little bit of mixing and matching, but I think maybe the guys I'm around, we can have a conversation on that. But out front, certainly the top 5 guys. If I recall correctly, I'm sure they'll be going hard and they'll be doing a genuine race. But for the rest of us, non-podium finishers, then I think we should definitely remind people what cars overtaking look like, because we don't see that much of it in modern Grand Prix racing.
Well, the crowd will be behind you, I can tell you that. Thank you very much, David, for your time, and thank you for coming to Goodwood. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
And have a great race. We'll be back with, I think we're going to be speaking to Karun Chandhok, actually. Yes, it's a Channel 4 show, guys. Anyway, we'll see you again soon.
Enjoy.
won it 2010.
Here we go. Here we go.
A pat on the back from McGuinness. Through they go. How close do you want it? A pat on the back. Come on, McPint, get your finger out.
Steve, look at this. Look at this. A pat on the back.